Next up, we have a Superstar session, and this is going to be all about critical traffic patterns and insight to monetize your game in Japan and SAE markets. So, Maria from Pangle, I think you're there. Is that right? Hey.
Hi. Hi.
Good
nice
stuff.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, well, I'll hand over to you, and you can tell us all about getting your game into Japanese markets.
Sure. I'll just share my screen.
Cool.
So, hey guys. I think I'll just click to the next slide because this is who I am. So basically, very nice to meet you. My name is Maria, and I work as a business development director for Central and Eastern Europe. And I'm looking after gaming publishers for the CE market. So today we're going to talk about the really cool topic, Asian market. Why? Because it's basically one of the biggest markets there is. And the topic exactly will be critical patterns and insights to monetize your traffic in Japan and SEA markets. A little bit about us at first. First of all, if you don't know us, we are Pangle. We are a global top 10 monetization ad network. We have an exclusive demand of TikTok for business, which is a huge deal, dependent on how TikTok grows. We ourselves as Pangle grew 22 times in the last 2 years. So we are not stopping. We're trying our best, and we're trying to get to the top with our talents and our experience and our knowledge. So Asia, as I mentioned, it is the largest game market globally. You can see that it basically takes up to 50% of the whole gaming revenue in the world. And in terms of the players wise, it's almost 1.5 billion. We decided to prepare this presentation for you so you could leverage your user acquisition or your monetization efforts and have better results. So let's deep dive into Japan and Southeast Asian markets. Why Japan? Japan is quite big, and the results there, if you do everything correctly, the results there are big, great, and the eCPMs are quite high in terms of monetization. And Southeast Asia is just a huge market, and it's just worth knowing how to play with it. Yeah, let's just check it. So Japan traffic. Let's first of all compare gaming weekday versus weekend. So as you can see, the weekday usually probably like how does the day of the usual person who works looks like. They wake up, they commute to work. You can see the first peak at around 6 a.m. So probably they are they're either eating their breakfast or preparing for their commute. Next, they would have a lunch break, and you can see the second peak. And then the last peak would be obviously in the end of the day when they're winding out, and then they're just relaxing, maybe on their couch, looking for some TV. But then if you check the weekend, you can see that the lunchtime is not as a strong peak. So you would see that it's kind of more flat in terms of the jump. So you would see that people are more or less active in the app on their phones, and they are checking games and apps. In terms of the gaming and non-gaming, you can see that first two peaks are mostly non-gaming because people are usually getting ready for their work. They maybe check their news, maybe getting into the work mood or something. But then in the evening, obviously, you can see that they entertain themselves by both gaming and non-gaming. So this is a very cool graph to just remember and know your user. Then coming to SEA traffic, same gaming weekday versus weekend. Actually, I'll just press to the next one so you can see that the patterns do not change as much because obviously the cultures are super different. So being Japan being mostly like Western world in this way, so they would just wake up and commute. But in terms of the SEA markets, they mostly drive on their motorbikes. They don't really have commuting paths, and usually they just have a lot of work. They would just jump on their motorbike and just drive around, and whenever they have a spare second, they would check your game or app, and you can see it clearly here. And then you can also notice that there is no such a peak in the morning. So usually probably people are mostly busy with work in the morning, and then starting from lunchtime until the evening, they have a bit more of free time. And then gaming vs non-gaming, it's actually a similar thing to weekday and weekend. You can see that there are only 2 huge peaks, which are again at 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. 9 p.m. is also like a bit later than Japan, so it only shows that it's very different in terms of the behavior of the user. And then let's check it on the bigger scale. So a year in Japan and SEA. And the first thing I want to start with is the Japanese love for manga apps. So manga apps, manga stories, they are basically stories that were distributed on paper at first, and then they just migrated to phones, which resulted in their huge growth in digital world. So you can see that in the last couple of years, it's just growing insanely. There is the thing that I want to stress out is that manga apps and core games users are very similar, actually. So they have high frequency of app launches per day. They'll have longer user sessions than other apps, and then the CVR is 30% higher. So if you have a core game, it's definitely great idea to cover and target manga apps. And then you can also see another graph that shows that user behavior is very similar, that they experience peaks in downloads at similar times. And then another thing that is worth knowing is seasonality in both of the markets. So for Japan, also because it's so similar to the audience is similar to Chinese market. So some of the Chinese holidays are kind of migrating to Japan as well. So whenever China would have their winter holidays, for example, around February, they would launch campaigns and target not only China, but also Japan. And then after that, there is a golden week that you should definitely use and target in Japan. It starts around, it's around 4 festivities coming one by one. And it's definitely a great time to launch campaigns, and you will definitely get good results. And then on to the next holidays, summer holidays and Obon Festival. Obon Festival is a 3 days long festival. Everyone is off, and obviously summer holidays are very students usually have a lot of free time. So again, you can see quite big spikes for both of these festivities. And then onto the last one is Japanese New Year. It actually shows a huge boost in in-app purchases in the games, because there is a fun tradition for Japanese people. They get small red envelopes, and they get, it's like the money is inside, so they would usually spend it on in-app purchases, which is a cool and great thing. So yeah, you should definitely leverage it. And then onto the Southeast Asia. It's actually a fastest growing mobile market in the world. They call it the second China. And here is the graph that will show you that it actually, in fact, grows pretty fast. And then same to Japan and all other parts of the world. You can see that there are games revenue fluctuations in different times of the year. So on the other hand, in Southeast Asia, it's mostly, like in May, it's mostly covered by 2 big holidays. Songkran is a Thai New Year, so a lot of people, Buddhist people, are celebrating, and it's quite a fun holiday. I've experienced it myself. Basically, you're just driving around on the motorbike, throwing buckets of water onto other people. Everyone's having fun. Although when someone is throwing like an ice bucket into you, not that fun, but still a great day to spend and experience. And then on to Ramadan, we just checked all of the spikes, and then we can see that It helps people to go through the day while they're fasting. So you would see the first spike in the morning after the morning prayer, and then after 8 p.m. roughly, there will be another spike in the evening when they already had the food. And then the next thing is actually an e-com power, I would say, or like the holidays that are created by e-commerce. It's closer to the end of the year, and then they call it mega sales season. So every e-com would try their best to do so many sales and to do so many campaigns, so people buy more, especially when it's holiday season and they want to buy presents for their loved ones or just something for themselves. So you would see so much campaigns, and then overall in gaming and non-gaming is just growing the usage of the apps, and then there is more traffic and the eCPMs are much higher. So it's definitely nice to leverage those seasons as well, and just follow any spikes that can be done by ecom, and then just launch campaigns right before or during these times. And then let's check the matching patterns between Japan and SEA. So for Japan, one of the most popular and downloaded games is puzzle games. You can see that in terms of monetization, they mostly use interstitial videos, and only around 30% is rewarded videos. And then in terms of ads, if you are an advertiser, because puzzle games are mostly inhibited with the women and like female part of the world, beauty and ebooks are definitely taking part in having good results. So they actually try their best to target puzzle games with their ads. Then coming to racing ad formats, you can see that interstitial video and rewarded video are closer in between. So they would use both formats. But in terms of the ads, you can see that because it's more male population that are playing these games, you would see the similar ads of the similar games inside of the games. But you can see that puzzle is also not that far. So for the female oriented games, they would also use some puzzle ads. And then onto RPGs, it's a totally different situation here. You can see that they are mostly using rewarded videos because they don't want a person to be interrupted while they're playing. So they would usually ask you to watch a rewarded video and then get like a loot box or some coins instead. And then in terms of the ads, it's the similar situation to the previous genre, and mostly it's tower defense, RPG, and some of the ebook and puzzles. And Southeast Asia, for them, the biggest one is hyper casual. You can see because hyper casual games are so IA centric, you can see that they are trying their best in using all of the possible formats. So they would do interstitial, banners, native, rewarded videos. And then in terms of the puzzle, you can see that it's pretty similar in Southeast Asia as well, because overall Southeast Asia is kind of like it's quite a big market, but if you compare them to Japan, Japan is a richer country. So Southeast Asia population would definitely rather watch a video instead of paying for the app. So definitely puzzle games show the same trend, and they're just using all of the formats available. And then simulation is similar to RPG. They're also using rewarded videos for the same prizes, all the similar ones. And then the top 5 matching demand sources by category that you can leverage for UA is ecom. Ecom, as I mentioned before, they are huge in Southeast Asia, and they are leveraging everything they can, to be honest. So you can definitely remember this graph and use it for your own needs. And then a little bit about us. If you still don't know us, we are one of the top ad networks there is. We have full access to TikTok for business on demand. We have a nice algorithms that we work on all the time to make it better, to make it perfect in the end. Then also we have event optimization. We have playable ads and also playable production tool, which makes it easier for you. And we have all of the ad formats that are popular and everyone has them. So it's quite easy to start with us. And then you can see that we're growing super fast. That in Japan, we increased our ad spend 7 times, and it's just going up, definitely up and up. And then you can see that our growth in Southeast Asia is even bigger. We grew 15 times and keep on growing as well, which I think personally are like great results. And these are the markets that were available right now. So if you have demand from, like, if you would like to monetize with us and you think that these markets are great for you, definitely just reach out and we will talk you through all of the things that you should know. And then this is just like a small chart of all of the companies that are already working with us and trust us. So hopefully we can see your brand there close to these ones. Thank you so much. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Hopefully it was a nice, insightful session, and yeah, looking forward for the questions.
Great stuff. And I've got lots and lots of questions. I'm going to start with one through the thread. You talked about Southeast Asia. It'd be useful. Oh, yes, go for it. Yeah.
Just a sec. Oops.
You can probably do it by unsharing your screen, and that will just clean it all up anyway.
Yes.
Oh, good stuff.
For some reason, I didn't want to stop. Yeah.
No, it's all good. So you talked about Southeast Asia and you talked about Japan. Just for clarity, can I just get you to sort of talk about what you mean by Southeast Asia? I think I know, but
sure.
Make sure we got that right. What are the countries you're referring to particularly?
Yeah, so it's Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So you can see quite a good split of what I mentioned in terms of the holidays. So first part would be like Buddhist people who are celebrating Songkran and stuff like that. And then all the Muslim religion that are doing Ramadan.
Yeah, so obviously Malaysia is a good example of that. Yeah,
and Indonesia actually, yeah.
Yes, of course. Sorry, yes, obviously. I was also thought you'd include the Philippines, but I know it's.
We just launched them like last month, so still not enough data.
The one thing, the reason I mentioned the Philippines in that particular context is because the Philippines seems, from my understanding, to have a market which is a little bit more similar to sort of a US market in terms of like appetite for content. Obviously, cultural differences aside, whereas some of the other territories are a little bit more kind of different, diverse, particularly obviously Japan. And when you're comparing the territories like Japan versus Southeast Asia, is there a risk that you could try, take a vanilla approach to try to do both, or is it more that you have to pay attention to each specific territory, each specific country within the territory, to be as culturalized as possible? What's your view on that?
I think Japan is pretty straightforward. So yeah, you just need to know the user and know their behavior. So like, for example, the manga apps that I mentioned, like I think there is nothing like that in the world. It's just this particular culture loves these particular things. So I think as a advertiser or monetizer, you should just know these things, and then you will be pretty successful. In terms of Southeast Asia, again, very similar markets. That's why I think you can just kind of combine them, and that's why we combine them in the presentation, and we think of them as a big market for Pangle. Is just because they are very similar. Even like I lived in Thailand for a while and Indonesia as well, and then you can just see how similarly they would react, or like what they would do, how they would work, how they would drive to work, or like open their apps. Even sometimes they're like on the red light, on the driving their motorbike, and they would just do a quick glance on their phone. So like Japanese people would never do that.
Never,
I've
never.
never
I mean,
been, but I don't think so. Yeah.
I spent quite a bit of
Yeah.
time in Tokyo. I used to work at Sony, and it's
Nice.
amazing how quickly you find yourself falling into rhythm and not overtaking. I'm a Londoner. I charge my way through, whereas obviously Tokyo is much more kind of fluid, should we say? But it's interesting because I think historically, my understanding, I think one of the questioners seems to have the same understanding as me, that there seemed to be a historical preference in Japan for premium games, and maybe to some extent IAP, but the ads weren't particularly popular. Has that changed in particular?
To be honest, I would need to change statistics. It's hard to say
Yeah.
just from my head. But yeah, definitely this person who is asking that can just drop me a note and I'll check and definitely get back.
Yeah, I think that's kind of when I was saying about different cultures. So my understanding historically was that, there are very culturally specific kinds of games which are very accepted by Japanese markets, and a lot of the Southeast Asia markets aspire to that manga anime kind of aesthetic. But often the kind of my impression is the kind of structured gameplay is very different. Now, I do think there's a social level of play which is very similar across multiple territories. I don't want to say conforming because that's the wrong kind of, but more cooperative maybe than, less individualistic, that's probably a better way to put it, than the West kind of games. So I think it's really interesting sort of, you putting the two together, because I still feel they're a little bit different, but it's interesting though, by paying attention, by looking at the way the markets work, by looking at the cultural events and adapting to those, so that, well, in any game, you want to make sure that you're communicating in a way that the audience cares about.
Yeah, for sure. Like basically just think how the user might think and just kind of work with that.
I have another Japan specific question here. For Japan, as the peaks are related to commute and work breaks, do you advise having shorter gameplay times and quick monetization techniques that go with that?
It's hard to say just basically like one way or another. I would say just test because as you know and everyone knows, I think on this conference, testing is basically the key in both monetization and user acquisition. Yeah. So yeah, I would say just test.
I've not been since COVID, but I know before then there was so little space.
I can imagine.
Probably.
I've never been, but I can imagine how small space. But yeah, I think just think overall like how it looks like, how maybe people are behaving if they're on the train and it's basically no space. Maybe just do something quick, fast. Maybe think about like some rewarded actual like timings that you can just play and get more rewards, for example, or just something like that. Yeah.
And honestly, one of the things I found really interesting is if you can make your game so easy to play, you can play it with your offhand, one-handed. That can make a lot of difference. Right. So we talked about holidays, quite a lot of detail. One of the things that the questioner here has asked is, how would you advise an indie to find out about those holidays? Is there a way that we can kind of work out? Is there some reference that we can look up so we get a sense of what holidays are particularly relevant for game developers?
Yeah, to be honest, I think Googling would be the fastest thing. There are lots of websites that basically just say, or like Wikipedia or things that can just show you the main holidays. I think similar to the Western world is usually like Christmas, summer breaks, because you know that people would be on their phones more, or like, you name it. But in terms of the Eastern world, you know that Ramadan is a huge thing. Then all kinds of New Year's, I think, is definitely worth remembering it. But yeah, just Wikipedia, or you can always text me and I'll help with that.
That sounds great. I do think it'd be interesting to see if we can get a collective site that captures this kind of stuff, but maybe that's for another time. Word games. Questions being raised about word games. Obviously, we're talking about different structures of language. I mean, the kanji versus the hiragana and katakana. I used to know my hiragana and katakana. About 100 kanji, I've forgotten all of it. It's been too long. But obviously, there's a lot of challenges involved with having word games, specifically in Japan. With other territories, it's very different. And I remember my kind of like double take when I realized that in Malaysia they used Roman characters. I don't know why I didn't know that, but I didn't know that at the time. And you think obviously with Korea and China, obviously, but there's so many different elements that go into not just language, but presentation layer. If you're doing Arabic, it's changing, from, left to right to left. And also with Arabic in particular, and I'm mentioning Arabic because obviously when you talk about Malaysia, you've got to think about the Arabic language, and it particularly then it opens up MENA, so the whole Middle East territory. But Arabic, you've got to have joined up letters to make a word. It's not a word if it's not joined up. Something I didn't know. Thankfully, Rami Ishmael told me all about that. So are there word games in those kind of languages that you've seen being successful, or word games that seem to translate across multiple languages? Have you seen anything like that?
Great question again, but from top of my head, it's hard to say, but definitely it's a great thing to research. So I'll definitely make a note for myself. And then if you're listening, just message me onto my email address, and I'll help with that for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the word game I've been working on for the last couple of years is never going to work in that context, because it's all down to particular stories and doing a word search. I can't imagine ever being able to translate that, but that's another subject.
Yeah,
right.
maybe.
Okay. Well, yeah, who knows? Now, are there certain genres that work better with ads than others, particularly in Japan?
I think I mentioned like puzzles, for example. They are quite good with ads. Then like kind of softer games. So obviously, even notice that even, for example, RPGs and simulation, they are still using in-app ads. It's just I think the way the best you just need to find the best way to show it, so you don't make a user just want to leave and like never watch ads again. But just do it in the way of rewarded videos, and yeah, it should work well.
I mean, it's an interesting one, because one of the things I've learned, and I've taken a lot of lessons out of the hyper casual space, but always bugged me, why do you put up with ads in the hyper casual games? And I realized it's because when I'm playing, the intensity of play needs a break. And the interstitial ad actually offers me a chance to stop, reset, and now I'm ready to play again. Now, in a game like Pachinko, which I know is very popular in terms of like the physical machines, I've heard the clanking of the Pachinko arcades, which is a really distinctive environment. That's a massively big thing in Japan. I don't know, but I would expect that a kind of interstitial type ad could work in a Pachinko game potentially. But again, I don't have any data. So if anyone in the audience knows, I'd love to find out. So last question. Do you see other territories experiencing the same kind of trends we see in Japan and Southeast Asia, in particular around the growth of manga and anime? Do you see some of the Eastern trends coming here over to the West?
Again, great question, but need to research. I can't really say from the top of my head, but definitely it is a very Japanese thing. I would believe that some of the closer areas to Japan would also be interested in similar things. But also, as you know, as you lived in Tokyo, Japanese people, they're very particular, and they can like some different things that other people might not like, or just not to be that much into it. So yeah, I will definitely research that as well, but hard to say like that.
Yeah, sadly I never lived there. I just got to stay there. I got to visit quite a lot of times. But I would love to. I mean, I'd miss it. I'd love to go back. But I think you're right. And what's interesting is we're talking to a few friends of mine from that area. It's much easier for games from China and Japan and Korea to come over to the West than it is for Western games to go over to China, Japan, so on and so forth. What often happens is people try to dumb down the game to make it be more Asian, and actually that can be counterproductive, because you've got to have a theme that works, but it's almost like celebrating your Westernness. But it is trickier. It will always be trickier, I think, to get Western games working in the East.
It's always worth having a good professionals who know the market and that they can just help you transform it for sure.
No question about it. I think always work with somebody local, and that's just not just about localization and culturalization.
Yeah.
That just means understand the market, and historically Japan has been quite a difficult market for a lot of Western companies to engage with, but there's no technical reason why you shouldn't be able to. It's not like China where you absolutely cannot work unless you've got a Chinese partner, but that's a different subject.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to thank you so much. So thank you obviously for the talk, but also because you're our sponsor for the track. So Maria, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And
Yeah.
cool.